Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shanel Lindsay, and I've come today from Massachusetts to testify regarding the bill pending to legalize, tax, and regulate marijuana here in New York. First, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to speak. These issues are close to my heart, and the work we've done in Massachusetts was pursued not only with the intention of improving our state, but as a model for the Northeast as our neighbors begin tackling this complex and incredibly important issue, one that sits at the crux of social justice, freedom, and economy. I'm an attorney and co-author of Question 4, the ballot initiative to legalize adult use that passed in Massachusetts in 2016. I've also been a cannabis patient for over 15 years, using it as a medicine to treat a chronic pain from an ovarian cyst I developed after the birth of my son. The experience of using this plant to improve my health, while also seeing the dearth of science and data surrounding its use, led me to develop a technology to allow people to properly prepare and accurately dose the plant. I founded my company Ardent, brought that technology to market, and now have an international brand focused on the science of cannabis, innovation, and empowering patients. As a lawyer, a mother, a patient, a business owner, and an advisor, I was appointed by the Mass Treasurer to the Cannabis Advisory Board, and in that role have been working with the Commission to develop our regulatory structure in Massachusetts with a focus on equity and ensuring market participation by all groups, including minorities, women, veterans, farmers, and small businesses. My work there extends in our group Equitable Opportunities Now and also the Northeast Cannabis Coalition. I see cannabis laws play out both in my home state and across the country. At the end of the day, one thing is certain. Prohibition is a failure in myriad ways. First and foremost, it leads to the unfounded but inescapable disparities based on race. The foundations of these laws, when enacted in the 1930s, were explicitly racist. It was an incredible strategic move with an evil intent, criminalizing a behavior that many responsible adults engage in for both health and recreation will inevitably lead to a larger portion of Black and brown people being penalized, despite that they don't engage in the behavior any more than their white counterparts. People of color will always have more interaction with police, based in some instances on the increased police presence in our communities, and others on the bias and suspicion that often accompanies us because of the color of our skin. Legalization for medical use and decriminalization are positive steps, but in no way address the systemic underlying problem. New York's medical system is strict and expensive. Very few, and certainly not at-risk, low-income patients are able to access the plant for medical use through the proper channels, leaving them exposed. Decriminalization is a gray area. Too often, it's incorrectly applied. I know this firsthand, as I was arrested for having less than an ounce of cannabis in Massachusetts after decriminalization. What should have been a ticket was instead an arrest. And if that happened to me, an attorney, and a mother using cannabis for medical purposes, what do we think is happening to our young adults who find themselves repeatedly in those situations? Well, we know what happens to them because the numbers don't lie. Possession, being one of the top misdemeanor arrests in New York State for the last 20 years, has resulted in over 1 million people being impacted, and a whopping 80% of those are Black and Latino. And 70% of those people are individuals under the years of 30 years old. And a stop and arrest is just the tip of the iceberg. Access to financial aid, scholarships, jobs, all wiped away, even without charges or court proceedings. These consequences lead to a lifetime of challenges, and their collective weight breaks our families, our communities, and our spirit. Add to this the hypocrisy of the growing legal cannabis economy, which is creating generational wealth and opportunities, but most often involve rules that prevent the very people that have been harmed from participating. As a business owner in the cannabis space and a woman of color, I've seen firsthand the creativity and entrepreneurial spirit that's held back by outdated draconian cannabis laws that oppress more than they protect. The legal U.S. cannabis market is growing rapidly, and despite the grim reality that people of color continue to bear the brunt of cannabis prohibition, individuals of color account for less than 1% of ownership in the legal marijuana market. Thankfully, the bill pending in front of you will rectify these issues. Our efforts in Massachusetts which were adopted by the legislature, included developing regulations that positively impact harmed communities and that ensured that minorities, women, veterans, and small businesses have meaningful opportunity and participation. The bill you are considering, too, is born from this same intent and includes provisions to stop the disparate impact of prohibition and create a regulatory system that will increase safety and generate revenue for the state. It is a champion for both equity and economy. In a historical context, marijuana prohibition is an anomaly with respect to humans' relationship with the plant. There is record of its use for over 5,000 years, both medicinal and recreational, throughout the world. Indeed, marijuana was also widely used in the U.S. prior to its prohibition in the 30s, useful for the treatment of numerous afflictions. Today, there are more arrests for marijuana possession every year in the U.S. than for all other violent crimes combined. And it is unique among the U.S. criminal laws in that no other is both enforced so widely and harshly, yet deemed unnecessary by such a substantial portion of the population. We are now seeing the dangerous resurgence of a vile rhetoric against the progress we are making to halt further harm and create an equitable system, both under the law and in the economy. Just last week, Representative Stephen Alford of Kansas stated that his opposition to cannabis legalization was legitimate because, quote, African Americans, they were basically users and they basically responded the worst off those drugs just because of their character makeup and their genetics. That this line of thinking still persists should be no surprise, and though you may be quick to denounce his remarks, know one thing: these racist thoughts and intentions were the basis of prohibition, and until we reverse course with legislative and underlying policy change, no amount of moral or intellectual condemnation will stop these laws from continuing to have their stated effect. Please do what is right for the people of New York and the nation by moving this bill forward. Thank you.